Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. I want to let you guys know if you have any construction needs, you need to get something done with your roof, maybe some remodeling. Check out K&H Construction. Chris Helmy's a local guy from Waxahachie. He'll get you fixed up. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. Chief, it's good to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, Chief. It's just running always, and you know how that goes. I guess, and I know as police chief, you're definitely busy and family man, busy. I don't know when you get time to sleep. Do you get to sleep?
I'm really happy if I get 6.5 hours. So
6.5 hours. Hey, that's all you need. You got it. It takes a lot of time to save the world, right?
That's right.
So, Chief, I wanted to have you on to talk about, crime like I do every year in the city of Midlothian. I've had other law enforcement officers throughout the county on, and hope to have the sheriff on here soon. But I wanted to talk about Midlothian and what's going on with crime in general, like we did last year, where we kind of covered all the topics. But before I get into that, can you give a brief intro about you?
Well, DV, as you know, I'm a career law enforcement official, if you say. I began my career back in 1987 with DeSoto. I spent 20 years with them, and I was fortunate and blessed to actually come on to Midlothian's director team back in July. Actually, I think yesterday or today is my 18th anniversary with the city of Midlothian. So
congratulations, Chief.
Thank you. It's been a long and good time with Midlothian. We've seen a ton of change over that time period, obviously. In fact, this week we are our administration, fire administration, police administration, our records, and our code officials have moved into the new facility that concludes almost 9 years of research and effort to bring a new facility to Midlothian. And so we broke ground February 23, and so there's been 2 years and 4 months of construction. We're finishing up in the next few weeks before we start phase 2, tearing down the old station and enhancing a trading building over there. We are certainly blessed to be in a new facility that's designed to carry the department 50 years hence.
I remember talking to you about that, and you were just about ready to move. So tell me about this new building. I can see behind you that you're in your new office. You got none of your stuff. No, I love me wall like we usually have. No award. You got nothing going on there. Tell me about this new building.
So this facility really is all about public safety because we brought together fire admin, emergency management, and police admin, our code official. It does have a holding facility. It has an enhanced crime lab, and it is designed to take the organization really, and we say that a lot, right? You hear that a lot, to the next level. But what it does is facilitate the ability for Midlothian police to continue to grow in both the use of technology, in-house facilitation of evidence collection and processing. And we have fire chief, emergency manager, and myself that are the epicenter when we come to, all things emergency management. And we can facilitate up to 75-ish people in the new EOC. And it's designed to host major events. We have a place for elected official. We have a place for breakouts. The amateur radio group that we use so often in emergency hazardous weather has a place in the facility. It's designed to get them in without taking them into the secure part of the organization, facility itself. So, and the facility is designed to enhance the environment that the officers work in. Where the old police department that was centered in the 1970 era church with very few windows, poor lighting. As you can see, this is The ceiling heights are a new standard. There are windows throughout to bring in natural light and elevate the natural emotional status of the officers. A lot of room for them to debrief. Um, the Emergency Operations Center is designed to operate through a F4 tornado direct hit continuum.
Wow.
The the generator is designed to operate the entire facility for 72 hours without refilling. Um, the uh, the 911 center is designed to grow and actually become almost a live crime center with some of the enhancements in technology we're seeing both in cameras and different live feed systems that you can actually institute throughout a community. So it really is designed to carry the department, its staff forward with a lot of in-house capability, and through that also enhancing the feeling of professionalism in a brand new facility really is designed to carry forward up to about 150 officers.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
should be close to the grow out of Midlothian Police Department if the city continues to grow to its natural grow out. So growth.
The way that it is growing, I imagine the processes of law enforcement are more intense and bigger now, with all these people, and then crime that comes, things develop more, and you're having to have this space. I hope that this building does help those processes, because that helps you enforce the law better. You
We actually have a computer forensic lab in-house as well. So because of the technology that's used now, as so much of criminal activity does have a link to, various technology uses, and we have, in our council and our city management have very much supported our growth in those areas, to house and become, build in-house expertise in the use of some of this technology. And so we really are seeing some great investigative work being completed by our staff. Um, I really am proud of where we're at today.
So, Chief, growth, since we touched on it, um, there is a whole lot of new houses in the city of Midlothian and surrounding communities, and there is a lot more things to do in the city of Midlothian. And so, with those things comes crime. It's inevitable, unfortunately. Talk to me about what you've seen the most growth in. Are we kind of cover, how are we doing with drugs? What are you seeing? What is something you want to warn the parents about that your officers are really touching on? Are we still dealing with fentanyl? Has that grown? That kind of thing. Let's touch on drugs first.
We are, so we instituted a team a few years back. We call our problem directed, it's PDRT, problem directed response team. And it's designed to not only address local narcotics, working with the HIDA task force that's centered and housed out of Midlothian Police Department. But it also addresses robberies and burglaries and any trend that the city may see. Uh, and so, because we're blessed not to deal with a tremendous amount of that type of criminal activity, the burglaries, the the vehicle burglaries. Now, not to say we don't have them, but in terms of comparison to other organizations, communities, we don't see the numbers that other organizations, communities our size see. And so we focus a lot on the driver of a lot of criminal activity, which is narcotic sales. Either the organized criminal element that's using, uh, they're using narcotics as a criminal base, but they're also pushing out. They drive people to commit crimes so that they can acquire those narcotics, and so uh, we do try to target the local narcotics from a standpoint of those who are buying, and we find those that have sufficient quantities that you can tell they are distributing and we backtrack that to the criminal organizations, and a lot of those are based out of Dallas, and that are being fed through hit, the Mexican cartels. So, with our connection with the HIDA uh, investigative staff that are here, we do a lot of collaborative work, tracing back where narcotics are coming and trying to take down uh, the local middle individual, the local middleman that is bringing narcotics to our community. And we've seen fentanyl, we've seen heroin, we've seen cocaine. We see and narcotics is not my specialty, DV, and not something I ever really wanted to get involved in. Um,
I agree.
so,
No,
but
I never
there
was big into it either.
there are there are new combinations of of drugs. There are narcotics that are created through chemistry to mirror different narcotics, naturally occurring narcotics. So we see a lot of that. The officers are very active in tracing the sales and where they're coming from, and trying to take down those criminal organizations, like stifling the flow of narcotics into Midlothian.
Do we have a bigger presence, kind of overseeing, like, have you seen any hint of maybe any cartel activity?
I don't know that we would go so far as saying that we have members of the cartel in Midlothian or Ellis County or locally, but I think most of our highly organized, well financed organizations that we engage have, have connections to the cartels. That's primarily where most of the fentanyl is coming these days. High grade methamphetamine comes from Mexico. They just have perfected making those narcotics and have a high demand, and have great access to good highways, distributing through Texas, North Texas, to different parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, they figure out how to get it. They definitely figure out how to get it there. I'm glad that the officers are on it. I mean, you can never completely think, but the fact that Midlothian PD is on it, it's always a good thing. It helps the community, because that's not a victimless crime like some people like to say. There's gonna be an event where you run into issue.
Yeah,
So
and the DEA was so concerned about the use of fentanyl in other drugs, they've started tracking overdoses, and we have successfully filed several cases where we have linked the overdose to a narcotic sale, and our district attorney has been very open and collaborative with us, trying to file those types of cases. Actually, going, like you say, it's not a victimless crime. So we're trying to make sure that when those offenses do occur, we take those to trial when we can. We'll also want to tell you, as a shout out to the Sheriff's Department, they have a very active unit, and we work in tandem quite often with them. They are great partners here in Ellis County.
yeah, I like that. When I talk to the different organizations in Ellis County, like talking to Chief Weiser when I had him on, and he talked about his great relationship with you, and that is integral. You guys are communicating. This area is still too small not to communicate.
Correct.
And as it gets bigger, you definitely have to communicate. It's just, I'm glad that you guys do that you have that relationship. Now, talk to me about one of the big issues that I know is touching Ellis County, and that's human trafficking and sexual trafficking.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what Midlothian PD has been working on, and kind of what's your role been in that as of late.
So I just said that. I actually have, I'll look through this in a second and see if I can't pull up our stats from last year, but we have have had a task force officers assigned to the Homeland Security Human Trafficking Task Force out of North Texas for about 3 years. And that we feel strongly based on the fact that human trafficking, whether it's labor oriented or sex trafficking, um, it touches all communities. And we have, through this task force and connections with our collaboration with Homeland Security, have been able to find and bring kids home and actually successfully prosecute human trafficking cases here locally that were occurring in Ellis County, but uh, we actually prosecute those in federal court because of uh, the enhanced criminal penalties that we can get through that. Um, so I will tell you that a big part of that is not only advocacy after we recover a victim of human trafficking, but just working with our local municipalities, providing that expertise through the task force that small agencies don't have, and using the forensic capability of these task force to find and locate, victims that have left home and are actively being uh, trafficked in Fort Worth or Dallas and other places. We have successfully brought kids home from those kind of environments. And then they provide routinely, the task force provides a proactive effort to identify those that would use the internet to try to attract sexual exploitation or contacts with individuals they believe are under age through the internet type connections. So that has also been a very successful program over the last 2 to 3 years. We've partnered with Ellis County and other agencies in DFW Metroplex to focus on different areas to create these kind of collaborative opportunities to take in people who would not only um, eh, participate in, trafficked people's plight, but, they are trying to create a relationship with someone they know is underage or they believe is underage. And so those are two of the major efforts we're putting into, to prevent that kind of criminal behavior in Midlothian and Ellis County.
I know I don't want to talk about methods too much because we can't be doing this. But does the police department have a way of knowing who's doing online, child pornography in the area?
We do get notifications of potential online pornography being trafficked, being pushed out through, as I said, not only federal sources, but through different um, technology that we have invested in to make sure that we're aware of that happening and occurring in our agency or in the area. These are it's becoming a very a very specific type of investigation, and I could tell you that the effort is not only local, state, but extends to the federal police organizations as well. It is a very collaborative environment when we're looking at that type of investigation. And we have actually issued and executed warrants for individuals that we've identified through those types of activities.
Is it a problem here? I mean, are we really like when we talk, because we covered sex trafficking, human trafficking, we've covered child pornography. Is it a problem in Midlothian?
I would tell you that, when we start talking about what is a problem, litter is a problem that we deal with business everywhere, right?
Right.
We all see it, and we can identify that it's an issue for our standard of living. But these crimes, because they're internet, a lot of them are internet based, and a lot of the connections are made through different social media apps. That it really is something that you have to monitor to ensure that it's not occurring in your community. These types of offenders they're very mobile and they can show up in any community. So I think one of the perspectives is, do we have a drug problem? I mean, do we have a meth problem? Do we have a fentanyl problem? Do we have a burglary problem. I think that we are very fortunate that the reported incidences are very low in Midlothian, but we're still very proactive in order to prevent that from becoming a regular event in our community, in our sphere of influence. We try to make sure that our organization is proactive enough to ward off those types of offenders and offenses within our jurisdiction.
Yeah. And it's hidden everywhere, but I definitely wanted to know if it was kind of going on here. I know it happens, but I'm glad that you guys are on top of that. Now, the other thing, one of the most dangerous situations that your officers could get in is a domestic violence uh, event.
Correct.
It's probably, besides that and traffic stops, are probably the most dangerous things your officers can get into. Talk to me about those kind of crimes. How are we doing with those crimes? Is that kind of a steady thing that happens, it happens, or have you seen more of an increase?
Now, that's interesting, a very interesting topic. So when we start talking about domestic violence, which really covers a broad spectrum of offenses, there's a lot of bleed over from domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault, a lot of things that we see in house, from the offender and the victim live in the same abode. We have been averaging about 250 cases a year over the last 4 to 5 years. There is an increase every year, about 10%, with the growth of our community. It varies between, 5 and 10%, but we are seeing that we're getting closer and closer to 300 incidents of domestic violence response. Now that can be, a Class C misdemeanor where we have what's called offensive contact, and we can resolve that through citation, and they go to municipal court for their trial environment there. And the state requires us to respond and to document and to prevent further violence in these type situations. And so each one of those takes an extremely important investigation on the onset. So we have to make sure that we believe before we leave there's not going to be further violence. And so a lot of times with our Class Cs, not only do we see the citation, but in other situations we see an arrest, so we know there will not be further violence. And so that's a regular discussion with our patrol elements, our investigative staff, because of the danger that resides in those environments. Because once you leave, you're back in a closed private home or apartment, and we have to be sure that the probability of violence is as low as possible. And the law gives us, that mandate. We shall make all legal arrests. When there is violence, we documented that when there's potentially more violence. So we're about 250, 275 a year on responses to domestic violence. And we are right now going through, not only training, but we're working with our CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, and the Heights to increase our ability to intervene with those and provide safe havens for those that are victimized or in danger, mortal danger, during the event. That's really my history and investigations. I was into child abuse and domestic violence style, or that vein of investigations for 13 years, and it's just the cycles are there. When it doesn't matter really at what level of what you would say social demographics that we encounter. Right, it affects all ethnicities. It affects all levels of income. It's something that is shared throughout the community at all our neighborhoods we visit. The potential for domestic violence is present. So
All right.
it is a very dangerous, and we see it routinely where officers are not only assaulted but shot indoor, and unfortunately at times, stabbed as well, because they're in an environment where people have these weapons readily available to them. So not only is it a very difficult call to investigate, it takes staffing, and that's one of the things we're looking at as we grow, is ensuring that our staffing is capable of dealing with multiple domestic violence at one time. And you never know when we're going to have an accident on 67 or 287, and that's a 2 to 3 officer response. So these are the type of things that are driving the size of the organization.
Right. There's a lot there. And I definitely want to cover the staffing after I ask you about this last one, which is probably one of the most heinous parts of your profession, is having to deal with murders. Obviously, there's been some murders that have happened in Midlothian, and there was an incident at the community park where some kid stabbed another kid. There's been some issues. So talk to me about those violent crimes. How are murders on the uptick, or what's going on with that?
Again, another one of those categories we don't see very often. I believe it was January 2022, I believe, we experienced a double homicide, suicide, domestic violence related, where the offender became enraged, killed 2 family members, and then killed himself. The next homicide that I recall, we believe we're still investigating that, and then we're fairly confident that's a narcotics-based situation, where there was a long-standing relationship between our decedent and what we found to be criminal narcotics gangs. So we have good feelings about, or good, shouldn't use the word feelings, but we have good evidence, and we feel strongly that case is solvable. We had a homicides, 2018, 2019, where a gentleman was killed. He was stabbed several times in front of the Walmart and left for dead off of one of our dirt roads here off of 67. And we solved that within 72 hours. And we actually had a recording of that on a phone, which is just, those are the kind of things that, you're right, they're the heinous crimes. The mindset that goes into that is something that is very depraved. Of course, the most difficult one that we have and continue to work on is the Missy Beavers homicide. That it remains unsolved. But again, we continue to address this with local media, with annual reports in April, and periodic updates. This one is another one where we are confident that we will continue to move forward, addressing and identifying parts of that event through, improved technology. And because of, the advancement of technology and the advancement of forensics, we feel confident at some point we will know what happened. I stopped there because, the older that case is, the more difficult the prosecution will be. But we are still confident that we will get to a point where we can announce what we know about this. We are not
Chief.
going to risk.
Mhm.
Yes.
Chief, since we're talking about the Missy Beavers case, what is the biggest impediment there, Chief? What is getting in the way of, and I know that there's a lot of internet sleuths and a lot of people who got, you should hire them for homicide. They got it down. I mean, they got it all down. But and I'm not belittling them, but it's just a lot that's online. What is impeding this investigation? What's going on with the conclusion? Why can't
Well, yeah. And so, with every successful prosecution, you have evidence to not only place someone from at a crime scene, but you have evidence that concludes that they committed the crime. And so, obviously, without going into detail, we are missing critical parts of that puzzle. Um, and it is very much something that we will not risk exposing. The efforts that we're doing in order to fill in those missing puzzle parts. So, it's very much uh, going through the documentation, readdressing that, uh, the original fact base that we have. And I can tell you that the staff that's back there now know that case very, very well. We have several investigators who continue to take leads and work those leads. And so I would just tell you that um, we are hopeful that through that continued work, that we will be able to identify those that were involved and and move forward.
Thank
Uh,
you so much. I'm really appreciate you even or addressing that because I know that a lot of people in Midlothian want to know where MPD is with it, but I also know the justice system, and I know that I mean you can know that it's somebody, but you got to if you go to court with nothing, then it goes away forever. Then
yeah,
there is no justice.
yeah, and I hope that those who study law and they study um, you know the criminal justice system and law enforcement know that there are thresholds that have to be met before you can move forward. Um, and I would also hope that, our community that knows, uh, gosh, as I said, my 18th year here, and um, seen so much change, and we've committed to address as many facets of that change professionally as we can. And I know there are people out there that doubt that, and they have a hard time looking back and saying, well, you've got some negative media presence, and that's true. There are always going to be those things where we have a misstep or we have an individual that doesn't do their job well, and we've gone back and addressed those things and continue to push forward. And we are not going to settle for mediocrity. I have a friend that went down to Georgetown as chief, and he said, "Refuse mediocrity," and we refuse to live in mediocrity. We're going to push forward and continue to do the best we can through training and efforts that that show professionalism, and that's the mission of this department is continue to grow and put professional police officers out there and protect this community and prevent crime and then solve crime where we have the data to do that. And I can tell you that it's been such a effort over the last 24 months to upgrade our not only our technology but our use of different applications and increase investigative presence. And our council has been extremely supportive, as our city manager, Chris Dick. So
Mhm.
they want a productive, reputable organization, and we're gonna do our best to show that they've invested well.
Chief, last thing I want to talk about with crime, and then we'll kind of run into the good stuff that
Mhm.
MPD is doing and stuff. The community park issue, and I know this is kind of a charged question, but are we safe at our community parks?
You know, I think you're very safe. My wife and I walk in the mornings and in the evenings at times, and we feel very safe there. And in fact, we're getting to see some of the same faces regularly who use that park as their primary mode of exercise. It's a beautiful park. And we all would agree that when you have something that uh, facilitates and creates an environment that people enjoy being, that's going to attract not only great families, but then it attracts friends of families, and it attracts a lot of things. And so back in the spring, we, and you know that we have a school resource unit that was named the best in Texas for 2024. And because of their efforts, because of the relationships with other school resource units and other ISD police departments, we received a lot of information from those campuses that we were going to have a lot of visitors this spring, as senior skip days and things. And so, we went as far as shutting the park down when we knew one of those days was coming, and showed a huge presence with law enforcement. And since that time, since the spring and the summer have kicked off, we've had officers in the park, uh, generally speaking, 3 days a week when we know we have heavy traffic and the weekend traffic is there, trying to abate and prevent, behavior that would expose people to dangerous situations. I believe the stabbing occurred on a Wednesday night, which is not our normal high activity night. When we don't have a presence out there, we have a routine patrol presence. We have officers that drive through that on a regular basis and make contact with people. Since that time, what we've done is we've instituted a park patrol from late afternoon till it closes, and throughout the day we will continually show a presence there. One, we want to make sure that our residents feel safe and that we hear their concerns. It Mayor made it very clear that, that he wanted our park to be used and enjoyed by our residents. And we agree. We had already started on that path, but, this incident amped that up a little bit. And so we'll continue to work through ordinance, through timing of the park opening and closing if we have to. And we will look at what will continue to enhance the safety. But DV, I think you would agree that when you have two individuals that know each other and have a point of conflict, and they're willing to fight, they're going to find a place to fight. Unfortunately, this time, this happened at the park. These weren't two strangers who didn't know each other. This wasn't a unprovoked attack. This was these actors, witnesses, these kids all knew each other. And so
it was building up. This was something that was building up. They had against each other, and it just all the stars aligned, and they ended up at the community park, and then that incident happened.
yes. And
And
so,
that can happen anywhere.
yeah, it could happen at any number of parks on the other side of the city. It could happen in Waxahachie, at Getzendanger. It could happen in Mansfield in one of their premier parks. So every police chief I know and the sheriff, we are all concerned about that, and we will continue to address that through presence, through prevention. That said, we all know that our safety is an investment we all have to make. We have to be aware of our surroundings. We have to be prepared to react quickly and remove ourselves from a dangerous situation. And I think that's something that we'll continue to push, is that while we are here to serve and protect and do our best, we still need our community to be aware of their surroundings, whether they're at the Kroger parking lot, walking from Kroger for their car, or, they're at any number of our businesses. And, we are growing and will continue to see large retail, and even we will even see a entertainment venue in the next 18 months develop off of 67 and 287. And we know that large parking areas will draw opportunities for burglaries of the vehicle, and we will do our best to have a presence there to prevent that as well. These are things that our other communities are seeing. And so we are all facing the same challenges, and we will all face, we will, as a committed group, through technology and through, our relationship with the sheriff's department and certain task force, we're going to do our best to prevent crime from occurring in those environments. But
Right.
we'll also have a campaign of self-awareness and make sure our community is well trained as we can get them to prevent becoming a victim.
Get your head out the phone. That helps. Know your surroundings, when you're walking out of places. That does help a lot. Um, Midlothian PD, like every department has some needs, and we're in budget time or coming into budget time or rolling into budget time. And I hope to have the mayor on to discuss the budget once everything goes through. What were your requests this year for budget? What are some of the greatest needs you think Midlothian PD has right now?
We went into this budget with a few things. One position in particular that was mandated by a new House bill that came through that will help us, not only report crime, but to kind of send our message out. We asked for a public information officer that was trained and focused on police responses, emergency management, and even I'm sure they will be involved with huge fire environments where there's a collateral, huge issues that need to be discussed and help keep our community informed. And then the other big need we had this year and last was staffing up for this facility. As we move, and I think we talked about this before, we've finished all the pre-application and submission of documentation to become a Texas accredited agency. So one of those aspects is having staffing in place not only for the front of the facility to facilitate its needs and how it works, but also in our detention center, having 24-hour coverage there. So those were things we really needed to staff this year were non-sworn public safety positions that were help run the building, provide adequate coverage for our detention, lowering our liability there, being able to do, cell checks on a 15-minute regular basis.
I know about that.
Yeah, and so our next quest will, we still, in fact, we just initiated another hiring. We'll be advertising a hiring process. We have one in the academy right now, we're waiting for that officer recruit to come back. And then we have 3 openings that we will be advertising for and filling right at the first of the fiscal year. And then we are waiting on the final copy of a staffing study that addresses a lot of what's coming in and our own growth. The department, when I arrived, had 25 officers. We have 90 officers now, and not including seven or 8 part-time officers who fill specialized positions for us. And then there's another, our dispatch center has 21, and then we have another 25 non-sworn in code enforcement, animal control that report underneath this umbrella. So some of our hierarchy needs to be addressed in terms of looking out, managing this 150 plus organization now. And so we've grown tremendously in the last 5 to 7 years, and with Midlothian posed to, could push over 60,000 by 2030. Those are things we're looking at.
That's a lot. That's a big number, Chief. That's a big number. Chief, go ahead.
I think we're going to break another, if I was listening correctly, it looks like we're going to break another process or application period for single family housing. So we are continuing to grow, and we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I've seen some of the cutting in that's happening here, there, and everywhere. And it's growth is coming. There's a lot of, eventually they're going to run out of space, but that's not yet. They still have some spots to fill, and that's going to be more people. Before I close the show, I'm going to give you the last word to kind of talk about the good things that MPD is doing every day and just kind of talk to the community.
There are several units that I am extremely proud of. Our CIU, the critical incident unit, or the crisis response units, that we have instituted and actually were funded a grant position 2 years ago because of their good work. They reach out to the community and deal with those that have that are in emotional or mental crisis, or have age related issues. And we have a group that goes out and checks on those individuals on a monthly basis. And in our advocacy program, one of our part-time advocate ever, I was talking to her the other day, and she reached out to someone who had a vehicle burglarized and lost a lot of tools, and was helping him uh, through a process of recovery, not emotional recovery, but what are the processes where I could possibly get my equipment replaced? And just that kind of advocacy where they reach out on crime victims and help them through those processes, making sure that they know where to follow insurance reports and things of that nature. And, um, you know, in, our, that PDRT unit that is so active right now, pushing as, as hard as they can to keep the criminal element from, getting a footprint in our community. Our task force that's, we're on a task force with Mansfield and Cedar Hill and Ellis County for auto theft prevention. And we experience about 30 vehicle thefts a year, and that is incredibly low for a community our size. And so a lot of the prevention activities we use through that task force are very, very productive. Not only finding the criminal element that is stealing and breaking those cars down, chopping them up. Um, you know, it's not uncommon that we find those in local communities. Even in Midlothian, we took down a shop, I think about a year ago, where we had 5 or 6 stolen vehicles that was on the corner of 14th and 287 before that house was bought and raised. So, it's all around us if we're looking for it. And that proactivity that I think we're able to push from an agency our size, not to mention our traffic unit who's out there in, trying traffic calming techniques on 67, 287, our commercial vehicle enforcement group who work to train and educate local industry to keep them from becoming violators instead of, hammering the violations themselves. All of these proactive efforts that we put into the school resource unit, again, uh, achieving statewide recognition, those are things that I think the community doesn't recognize, just the leading efforts that we have for a community our size, that other municipalities can't, or, don't feel led to do. That I think that our community should be very proud. That Citizen Police Academy, I think we're pushing upwards of up close to 30, 32 of those. And that's a consistent effort to educate our community on what we do and why we do it. National Night Out, we continually, rate in the top 2 to 3 statewide. The efforts that unit puts out, getting the good word out, doing inspections for people, home safety inspections, talking to our retailers about what they can do to make their environment safety. Our relationship with the Heights in the Child Advocacy Center, being on the boards of those and making sure that, like today, we were involved in a 2-hour discussion about how to improve the whole effort behind child abuse and in family domestic investigations that involve our children. So the efforts back there are just incredible for a community our size, the county itself. As you mentioned, Chief Weiser, myself, Chief Munn, uh, you know, uh, Tracy Aaron in Mansfield, Chief Rez in Cedar Hill, all have a very good relationship that we collaborate because our borders touch. Chief Cessny in Grand Prairie, what a supporter of this organization he is. We're collaborating on radio transmissions and the ability to coordinate when we come together at those jurisdictional boundaries out to the west. So there's a lot of work on a daily basis in the background to make us more efficient in our mutual aid in services the best that they can be for our community.
I thank you so much for coming on and talking about those things. And definitely when you were mentioning the Heights and Ellis Child Advocacy, they're doing God's work over there, trying to help people. And just the fact that as a law enforcement agency, you're seeing that you have to collaborate with these people in order to solve crime, to prevent crime, it's just part of it. And I thank you so much also for serving your community. I know that this can be a thankless job. And I also know that, you're a family man. You love your family. You're a great family man, great father. And this takes a lot of your time. And you've been doing it a long time. So thank you so much for serving your community like that, Chief. Can you stick around real quick after the show?
Yes, sir.
Thank you
For
so
sure.
much.